All right, welcome to Imperial Advisor 21. We are traditionally late, but we are untraditionally quite a bit later than usual because Skype hates us, basically, and Andy in particular. But we're here. Our chance of having actual chat and conversation is probably gone, but we will soldier on. So we've got full house for the first time in 2018, I think.
Yay!
Yay. Yeah. We're mostly recovered from the Kotei, I suspect. And so I've got Eoin, Justin, Baz, and Andy. And plan for today is talk a little about the Kotei, about how we got on, what we saw, how I think there was kind of a few different perspectives from the weekends of people sort of approaching the tournament from running it, streaming it, or playing in it. And then maybe let's talk a little bit about our new Scorpion overlords and how we may try and overthrow their tyranny / sabotage such attempts.
Said the Scorpion.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So maybe let's just start with sort of a quick sort of rundown how people got on over the weekend. How was their Kotei experience? Maybe Eoin, kind of you can lead off there as a person who is sort of running it more so than playing.
Yeah, it was an interesting challenge. We figured going into it about 200. And that was nearly bang on. We had 199 people registered at the end. Friday was mostly getting the hall ready and doing pre-registration. We had basically had 7 staff to run it with, which is okay. Would have liked 1 or 2 more, but that was okay. It was an interesting logistical challenge from a number of factors because there's some stuff that came in kind of from left field to make life a bit more difficult, but all in all, it went reasonably well. We knew Saturday was going to be the worst day in terms of time management. So we started at 10:30 and we finished by 8:10, which I don't think you could do any quicker with that number of people. I think we were basically averaging about an hour 15 to an hour 20 between round, turnaround, post results, established pair and skipping the season for the next one, and it was about as quick as we could go. I don't think we could go realistically any faster. So I was very pleased from that point of view. There were no major incidents that went wrong on us, so we were happy about that. The biggest problem we had on Saturday was, despite being told that the restaurant was open, the restaurant didn't open, so we had to take lunch a bit earlier than we liked. We'd be like, okay, this round is the lunch round, and we couldn't do that because the restaurant was closing at 2:30. So we had to we got to give people their lunch now, otherwise they won't have anywhere to go get food apart from the shop across the road. So yeah, that was largely it. But it went well. Got a lot of good positive feedback, so I'm happy with that. And yeah, handled it reasonably well. Very proud of my team, and proud of you guys as well for helping out. And I thought the coverage went really well, between Baz doing the coverage of the event and post-analysis of the event afterwards, and Andy and Sake House Brawl podcast member Jack streaming the games. So I thought it went really well. Although,
yeah, it was cool. It was really good. I remember on the first day, I think at lunchtime, Baz, you were just doing a quick sort of initial run of the numbers, and you suddenly pull up the chart of the number of players of each clan, and everyone's like, oh, didn't expect that, as we suddenly saw all these Crab and Phoenix players.
It was a bit weird, alright, yeah.
So Andy, from we're talking about the stream there, how did you find commentating the event and streaming?
It was let's say a little less smooth than the event in London. The event in London was like super professionally set up, and everything was really, really nice, and all we had to do was sit in chairs and talk about the game. Whereas this time around, we had to do the setup. We had to find internet. We had to get the levels right on the mics, get the actual mics running. We had to. It took a little bit of like back and forth with the stream to actually figure out what was going on, because I think me and Jack, the only feedback we had from the stream was looking at the chats on our phones, and I went through like 10 gigs of memory, or 10 gigs of throughout the weekend. It was like 12 hours of streaming to my phone. But yeah, I went through a lot of data in that time. But it was really great. I mean, we started really late. Jack was unfortunately late on both on both morning sessions. But yeah, the stream goes on. Baz came in. He did his bit, and it was great having him on the stream. And yeah, it was a really good tournament. Long day. It's my first Kotei, actually, first full Kotei commentating, because I think my first one ever was the World Championships in Sheffield in 2016, 2016, something like that. No, 2014, 2015. And then that was only finals day. That was the second day. This one was 2 full days of streaming, and it takes its toll after a while. Yeah. Especially when you get drunk the night before the finals day, and may have sold yourself in an auction, in a charity auction, for €100.
This weird thing happened. Yeah, on Saturday night. I was going to the bar to get a drink for myself and Baz and a couple others, and suddenly I hear that. So at WarpCon, for people, there's like a charity auction, which is kind of quite famous for people who are at the convention, buy, various sort of gaming stuff.
Anything.
Yeah, and spend lots of money. And suddenly the guy goes, was there anyone who was at the L5R? And there was sort of like a few cheers from the back as from the guys who were there. Like, because I've got one of the streamers here who was who's just come up on stage and offered himself to be like a lot in the auction. And so I look up, and there's Andy in his Imperial Advisor beautiful yellow t-shirt. I mean, he had the t-shirt on for a while, and as the bidding started,
cut it there.
The t-shirt came off. The bidding continued, and
I had to try. It was for charity, man. I had to do something to get the numbers up.
They immediately paid him $100 to put it back on again.
Oh, absolutely. Who wouldn't?
Yeah. So
and then gave me a second t-shirt just so it would never happen again.
All for charity.
Yeah.
All right. So Justin, how was your weekend?
Yeah, great. Yeah, had great games. Really enjoyed myself. Narrowly missed the cut. More on that in just a few seconds. But yeah, had just fantastic games, great opponents, fantastic run events. And actually the one thing I was most surprised about was how strangely fresh I was after the full length of the day. Because while 5 Rings was off in the void, being reconstituted by FFG, I kind of picked up and started playing X-Wing, and I'd gone to a few big tournaments of X-Wing. And dear God, I have never been as shattered as playing games as I have been after playing an X-Wing tournament. And so I thought, oh, this is it. I'm finally getting old. It's finally caught up. So I was slightly dreading actually facing into potentially like 10 hours of playing 5 Rings. But at the end of it, I was still really mentally quite fresh and quite together. So that was great. That was super. But yeah, as I said, it was a fantastic run event, and yeah, great opponents, great games. Yeah, can't say anything too negative. In fact, nothing negative, except for one little thing. And this actually has nothing to do with Eoin and his team. So when I sat down for my first round, my opponent wasn't there. Mm-hmm. So what happened? So basically, I think his name was Arwell. I've forgotten his surname, but he was down on the list twice. So he sat down to play one opponent, and I was like the other guy he was supposed to play, but didn't. So the game was marked. So basically, I was given a win, and the game, like my opponent, was marked as a drop. But the issue here is that if that happens, then under the current way things are set up, it completely destroys your opponent's match strength. So it's effectively a loss. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you get marked as a win, it's as good as a loss. So that's something that FFG might want to look into in the future because, yeah, I mean, yeah, like I was, there were actually your friend, it was Alex actually. Remember? Yeah,
Yeah,
Alex was,
yeah.
so basically one of Andy's friends that he traveled over with, Alex, we were sitting literally across from each other, different tables, and his opponent didn't show up either. And we both finished on 5-2, and we both finished, I think, at least a full point below everybody else's strength of schedule. Because our opponents didn't show. So, like I said, I mean, we got the win, but for all intents and purposes, we got a loss because our opponents didn't show up. Because we couldn't afford to lose. We could only afford to lose one game after that, a single game. So that's the only blot on an otherwise flawless weekend. And as I said, that has nothing to do with Eoin and his team, but it's something that FFG might want to take a look at in the future. So that was it. But apart from that, superb. Had a ball.
Cool. It's interesting you said you were really fresh because I had sort of the opposite experience, but then this is kind of the first time I've had a full day of L5 boring. So I made the cut at 3-1. I was feeling pretty good about myself and like hadn't expected to do quite that well. And then the afternoon after that, it just sort of I started playing really poorly and making just dumb mistakes, and like mentally I was just gone. But and finished 3-3, I think, and dropped. Baz, how was your weekend?
I was pretty happy on the Saturday, so I went 5-2 as well. And I was delighted to see that my 2 losses both made the cut, which makes me feel good about myself. I absolutely was exhausted by the end of it. Like, I was doing everything I was supposed to do, so there was lots of water. I was eating nuts in between regular bathroom breaks. There was a packed lunch and everything. But like after the first couple of games, it's all just a blur, and I was just kind of in the moment, which was a bit weird. So one of my games was streamed, and it's actually worth having a look at once it goes up, because it's just Andy and Jack going, did he forget Spyglass again? No, we must have just missed it when he drew. No, he missed it again. God damn it, Baz. So I mean, I snuck at that game in the end on tiebreakers barely. But I think maybe that was reflective of what my games at that stage of it were like. But once I got to the end of that, my wife came over to check on me, and she was like, you've just got one game left, you're fine. And I'm like, no, there's at least 2 more games, right? What round is this? Where am I? because it was a complete blur. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like being in the games and playing those games was really good. I definitely enjoyed myself, but I definitely could have performed a lot better, I think, if maybe I just need more practice. But I was delighted with 5-2. I was very happy with it.
Cool. So in terms of results, we saw well, I guess we saw kind of a mix at the end of day 1, but particularly into day 1, Scorpion kind of really started dominating. Was that? I guess that was kind of what we were talking about going into it. But were people surprised, sort of, I guess, at the day 1 results, or the kind of what kind of were the takeaways for you from what you saw? Eoin, maybe do you want to sort of lead off on that?
Yeah, the crab numbers were immense, and I think that's a combination of crab having a fairly good finish to the Imperial cycle and looking like a decent matchup against kind of Scorpion and Dragon, who were looking very strong. And that was the kind of complexion of the tournament. The Phoenix had come along a long way. They got a lot of stuff towards the end of the Imperial cycle. So I think some of the floating players wanted to try them out, and a lot of the floating players kind of went over to crab to basically, because thinking, oh, this deck's good. It's a good solid deck. It probably has a matchup against everybody. And then what we saw in the cut was really, the cut was actually fairly diverse, because the clan challenger helps out with that a lot. Like, I mean, even Unicorn gets some representation up there, and the best Unicorn went 3-4, which is, oh man, it's like, yeah, it's just super bad about Unicorn. But the it was interesting. And then, as you see going into day 2, like, there were little warning bells started flashing when I was looking at the qualification rates. I was like, yeah, unless some people start turning this around, you could end up with kind of what we ended up with, which was Scorpion looking very dominant. I think from looking at the participation, people rated Crab well, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out exactly what went wrong. I think it's mostly down to Scorpion having a very complete set of tools at the moment, and everybody else is still trying to figure out how to deal with them. I did get some feedback. I thought about some stuff as well about running the tournaments. I learned a lot from helping run Madrid, and running that one. There's a couple of things I would like to propose to FFG at some stage. That currently there is not that there was any stalling in the tournament, but there is currently no recourse for a judge if they spot somebody stalling, bar game loss or DQ. And functionally, the way the tournaments work, if you game loss or DQ somebody, probably ended their tournament, or towards the later half of the tournament, you've definitely ended their tournament. So,
yeah, it's super rough.
Basically, it's a big issue, and it's one that they need to put in basically a warning system, so you can go, okay, you've just taken 30 seconds to decide which card you're discarding with favored niece. That's a warning. Please don't do that again. And you write that down, record that. And if someone gets 3 warnings, that might be a game loss. Because at least then you're like not going, no. Like you can't DQ someone over taking 30 seconds to discard for a favorite niece. That would be ridiculous, you know? But you could warn them. And that's one of 3 warnings. And that's something you can do. Because we had a 7 staff. We cannot monitor all the games. That's the way it can't monitor all the games. Like, you know, we need 100 judges to monitor all the games, so it's not possible. So you're just moving around and getting told stuff after the fact sometimes, and you know, sometimes said, oh, like someone comes up and tells you at the end of the tournament, and you're kind of like, well, okay, you know, some information before this would have been nice, you know. But yeah, like by and large, no big problems. But I would definitely say a warning system would be appreciated if FFG could give us one of those. And yeah, just a couple of other tools for the judges and the TOs to smooth over a couple of other things that I definitely feel you just want a few more tools for stuff. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me it was the first time playing in tournament conditions with the tiebreakers and proper time limits. And it definitely was very striking how it changes the game. In a pretty dramatic way in terms of how you need to play it out and how you need to be aware of kind of that as a factor. In my first game against Mark, who's some of the Dublin guys that know, I was like afterwards, actually I should have made a defense, which probably wasn't the right call, but probably would have saved a province to give me a win on points at time. And it's kind of weird where you do things that wouldn't necessarily help you win the game in the long run, but may help you have the tiebreaker in the short run. Which is definitely kind of quite a different way of looking at the game. But I also saw a conversation at a table with Simon once, which was 2 guys. Well, one guy was kind of asking the other guy, can we just sort of pick up the pace to try and get through sort of the turns before time's called. And I think the guy he was talking to didn't kind of get English wasn't his first language, so was trying to understand what the guy was saying and what the point he was making. And this guy, I felt quite bad for him because he spent like 2 minutes trying to explain to this guy what it was like. Actually, if you just played this would have been quicker in the long run. Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I don't think the guy was being intentionally slow, but you definitely, particularly like I had a match actually against a guy here where I was very conscious that I was winning as time was approaching on points, and then, you're trying to make the right decision, but you're sort of conscious, like, I don't want to appear like I'm stalling, but I have to play at a normal pace. It's a weird sort of you almost start hurrying yourself to sort of avoid appearing slow as well if you're a bad player like me. So that was kind of interesting for me as well. Annie, I don't know, that's not a question. Anyone want to sort of pick up on that? On tiebreakers or playing to time?
It's going to be a factor. It will be a factor in some games. The way the game is currently set up. Some people are advantaged from playing as more kind of slow, deliberate pace, and because the game so much rides on your decisions in it, you might take a little bit extra time. And if you're kind of favored, you've got your 2 provinces up, and you've got the favor. Well, you're not in a rush because you want to take your time, just not necessarily stalling, but you want to take your time making your decisions. You don't want to let that lead slip away because if it goes to time, that's a full win if you're 5 points ahead. So it's it's a real factor we kind of just have to be aware of, and just it's tough because you're not accusing people of cheating, or you're not accusing people of thing, but certain clans are advantaged when the game finishes on turn 3, and certain clans are advantaged if it finishes on turn 7. And if you're a clan that's advantaged in turn 7, you want to get to turn 7, and the other player, may not be in that much of a hurry to get to turn 7. Maybe like, well, let me just think about this thing for a second because this is an important decision. It's difficult. It's very difficult.
And that may have been one of the reasons that people were playing Crab, because in testing, you'll find that Crab do quite well, but they need that turn 4, turn 5, maybe even a turn 6 to actually have that chance. Yeah. And other decks can play a slower game where they will win out on turn 3, or will be in a position on turn 3 where they will win out on tiebreakers. And if Crab doesn't have the opportunity to get into that later game, they are going to suffer.
Actually, just on Baz, maybe for you guys, it'd be good to just give a quick overview about what decks you brought, and were there sort of matchups you thought went well, went badly? How did it run? Justin, you'd like to?
Yeah, so I went with Travis's deck. I played a few games of it before heading out. I really liked the ideas. Like the logic was really super sound. So I ran with the deck that Travis has been kind of championing, and
which is
it's Phoenix Shigenja Courtier deck running Mia Satoshi to dig for Kanjo district basically. So it's just kind of like a standard Phoenix Shigenja Courtier build, but with Satoshi to dig for Kanjo, because Kanjo is basically a win condition in itself. So it was very interesting. Like I got to say, like if you want to beat Scorpion and Dragon as a Phoenix player, I think the deck's an absolute work of art. It's just very, very. I mean, it attacks the Scorpion deck on a couple of different axes that I think Scorpion actually have quite a hard time dealing with. Like it being digging with Satoshi enables you to get lots of keeper initiates on the board, so you can go wide. So you can do an awful lot of damage. You can push them in all kinds of different ways, and it's defensively quite robust. And it's got enough that it can go over and take a province most turns, and sometimes, like if you get lucky, you can take 2. But it did have some weaknesses, I found. Bizarrely, I found that it surrenders almost all tempo at the start of the game. I mean, those could be down to my starts and how the cards turned. But I found in every single game, I was in a hole from the very, very, from the start. Like just standard Phoenix stuff, you start behind. You start behind in the game, but the feeling was actually quite magnified. Playing this deck, so you're under pressure for a huge amount of the game, and then you slowly turn things around, or you don't. So Gordon is asking if you run Magistrates also as other Imperial cards in the deck, and yes, the deck runs 2 Magistrates. Only 2 because you're searching with Satoshi, so you still see the haughty Magistrate quite regularly. But if you've got 3, he can interfere with digging for Kanjo a bit too much. So the deck just runs 2. And yeah, as I said, if you want to attack Scorpion, I thought it was a fantastic deck. And the one thing, the most important thing it taught me over the weekend is how much I completely underestimated Master of Gisei Toshi. And I mean, I cannot understate how completely I underestimated that card. She single-handedly destroys Scorpion. She's unbelievable. So what the Master Gisei Toshi does is, at the start of the conflict phase, you name a ring, and during conflicts of that type, non-spell events cannot be played. So what she does is she shuts all the big Scorpion tools out completely for one conflict a turn. So no Fate Worse Than Death, no Miramota's Fury, nothing. And you simply go, here are a bunch of stats, because they're playing no attachments either, the Scorpion decks, for the most part. And you just go, here's a bunch of stats, attack. And she also has an amazing synergy with the Shibi Yojimbo. So what you do is the Shibi Yojimbo has like really, really powerful, but is prone to getting targeted itself and taken out. So what you do is, like, say you name water for the sake of argument as your ring type with Master of Gisei Toshi. You send the Yojimbo in your water conflict, and your Yojimbo is completely protected by the Master of Gisei Toshi. And then on your next conflict, whatever that may be, the Yojimbo protects the Master of Gisei Toshi. And so you have this just wave of negation coming across the board. And as I said, I completely underestimated it. And actually, Baz, I didn't have Master Gisei Toshi in any of my decks. Coming up to this, like in the testing that we did. So but that was the one thing I learned. So I certainly think, when talking about how to beat Scorpion, I think Phoenix have some serious tools, and despite the fact that the records didn't show that over the weekend, and obviously more testing needs to be done, but I do think Phoenix have some serious tools to attack Scorpion, and it's Master Gisei Toshi. And again, like you've got other things like with bizarrely Know the World, a card that I've also kind of panned, and actually I think justifiably up to this point. Becomes incredibly strong with Master of Gisei Toshi, because you can name a ring, name fire, whatever. You go over in the fire conflict, you bash their province in, and then in pre-conflict actions, you Know the World to switch the fire ring back into the pool, and then you just go fire again before your next conflict. So that's two. So basically for your entire turn, the Scorpion player can't interact with you. They can play conflict characters. That's it. They can play conflict characters, but that's all they get to do. While you still have your spells available. And this is one of the things, actually, one of the weaknesses with Travis's deck is Travis's deck wasn't built to take advantage of that as much as possible. Because often you'd Master Gisei Toshi to lock out a conflict, and then you would go in, and because the deck runs very, very light on spell events, you actually have nothing you can do in the conflict to really push your advantage. So certainly what I think what I am working on at the moment, and what I think is probably, or looks to me like the strongest Phoenix deck going forward, is actually a Shigenja heavy build featuring Master of Gisei Toshi, and that gives you all the tempo tools, the really aggressive tempo tools that Phoenix can use to abuse a lot of the slower clans, and it also gives you the lockout potential against decks like Scorpion. Where you can just lock them out of the game and break enough provinces to make a push through. So it was really instructive the weekend, and playing that deck. And I can only commend Travis on the deck was just beautifully constructed. Like, it does have weaknesses. I think Crane can be a real problem. And again, the streamed game that I got utterly destroyed in, my God, it was. But in fairness, that was down to a really bad draw on my part and a really good draw on my opponent's part. So it was just a catastrophe. Like, basically, I ended up with 3 policy debates in my hand after drawing my opening set of cards. He had an assassination for one of my 2-cost guys. I took a look at his hand. He had a second assassination, a whole bunch of military pump cards, a court games. So I was basically put in a position where I couldn't defend myself in that conflict, or I couldn't defend that conflict, and I had to actually start taking the assassinations and the court games to try and set up for the following turn. And then he drew into an admit defeat, which shut me out of the game. I had a way back in, but I just got blown out, and that game was awful. But that was just, bad draws happen. And as I said, the other game I lost was against Crane, was against a French guy, Alain Houlet, I think. And Yeah, he got a slightly better start, and Crane he played really well. He got an honored Doji representative was his first character. It was Doji representative, way the Crane to honor it, and he just bled me for several turns while I tried to fend it off. The game swung kind of back a little bit toward me and went back and forth a bit, but as we were getting toward time, he was way ahead. I just conceded. He'd absolutely won that game if they got another turn or two. So yeah, as I said, really instructive, very, very good deck, and I would strongly advise all Phoenix players to pick it up and try it because, as I said, if you're looking to understand how a deck targets a specific matchup, then play that versus Scorpion and against Dragon as well, because it's just very, very well targeted at beating those two clans. And that was it. So that's what I played.
Cool. Luckily, Travis isn't here in chat today for all those compliments. Baz, I think you sort of were similarly looking at the Scorpion matchup and trying to target that. How did that work for you?
I was happy enough with the deck's performance. So the classic deck out there is originally based off the Kingsley deck, but Kingsley and Mind's Desire have been doing a really good job kind of developing that. So there is a version out there with some refinements that many Dragon players wouldn't have seen. So Satoshi is in there. They've got Jade Masterpiece in there, which are differences to the kind of original deck that most people have been playing. I went with that and I made a bunch of changes on the conflict side. And the reason that I was making those changes is I felt when I was playing against the Scorpion deck, I was getting dishonored out a lot. Just because I'm drawn aggressively, and possibly, I'm sure John will say that I'm terrible at dishonoring myself out, but it's just something that I found happened a lot. If I didn't bid high to draw cards, I just wasn't drawing cards. So I wanted to get a little bit more card draw into the deck. So that's why I started playing around with Satoshi initially, because he got me into Imperial storehouses, or he got himself, or he got the Imperial Palace, which is a little bit more card draw. And then I went with the Unicorn Splash to get Spyglass. So that was the theory. Crab and Scorpion were the two decks that I was looking to help against. I think it definitely helps against the Crab matchup, but it didn't quite go the way I was hoping with the Scorpion matchup. With the Scorpion matchup, the basic idea that I was going for was to get into a policy debate as soon as possible, pass conflicts if needed to, but make sure that I defend. And first action is a policy debate, trying to get that a fate worse than death out of my opponent's hand. Now, in the end, I played one Scorpion. I played Dmitri, who is one of the Greek players. I did exactly that. I got a character out. I think it might have been a Knit Master. I'm not entirely sure, but I defended successfully, policy debated, saw the fate worse than death, got it out of his hand, and then realized that he still had another 8 cards in hand that were just going to make a complete mess of me, unfortunately. And he did on that turn, and then the next turn there was a Mono Warrior that cleared my board, and then it was just a steady downhill after that. So the approach I went for, maybe I need to get a few more games in with this style of deck, or maybe I just need to switch completely over to the Crab side that Kingsley and Mind Desire have been working on, have been tuning slightly. I did have, as I said, the policy debates. I did have Fingers of Jade, and then I was using the Spyglass to try get a little bit more card draw out to try get down to all those, but it just wasn't enough. A card I wasn't playing is Censure, which maybe I should have been. With Satoshi in the Imperial Palace, you've got a decent chance of getting the favor in Dragon, and obviously if you get the favor, it makes Agasha Sumiko a little bit better. One of the things I am going to be looking at though is because I can't beat them, I might join them, and I'm going to have a look and see if a Scorpion Splash with 2 to 3 a fate worse than deaths might be worthwhile, and kind of go down that direction instead, because Dragon already have Let Go and have Miramoto's Fury in faction, and then taking a few more of those cards from the Scorpion side might help. Now you kind of got to work on a different play style with that to be able to free up the fate. But arguably, with cards like Stone of Sorrows and more importantly Jade Masterpiece, Dragon might be able to do that in a different way. And often when they get that initial super unit out, I mean, not even a super unit, but if you get your Knitting Master out turn 1, you actually have a lot to work with turn 2, even if you're not making anything from your Dynasty deck. So yeah, as I said, my last game was against Dimitri, a Scorpion player, which I lost. My first game was against Eugenio, who was a Phoenix player, which again I lost. All the other games in between were tight, were ones I just barely scraped out. So yeah, I'm not too sure what to say about those. Some of them I feel like actually, if you look at the game I played against Eric that actually got streamed, I probably should have lost that. When I got my policy debate off first, when I laid out all the cards, there was a voice of honor there, and when I put it down, I was like, "Oh, did you mean to play that?" And he was like, "Yeah, I probably should have played that." And I mean, that's just 7 rounds in, and I go policy debate, pick up my dial, and he picks up his dial. You know, maybe at that point he just didn't react fast enough to think, yeah, maybe I should just cancel this instead. So yeah, Dragon I think is in a relatively good place to try beat this Scorpion monstrosity that's out there. Censure definitely needs to be in the deck. I don't know. You're packing in a lot of things. Luckily, Dragon is quite strong anyway. It's got a very aggressive, very reliable deck, I think. I do have a few concerns that we're overly reliant on the Knitting Master, which is one of the reasons that I moved over to Unicorn, because the whole Unicorn suite doesn't rely on getting the Knitting Master every time. But yeah, didn't quite make the grade, I feel, with Unicorn, so I'm gonna have to try a few more things. But I really do like that deck when it clicks, when it works, and you're drawing into a bunch of cards and you're getting all these attachments down. It does feel really good. The board develops well. One of the cards I was playing was Togashi Kazue, who is a personal favorite. She worked out every time. Anytime I had her in hand and was able to play her, she kept a unit alive a little bit longer and destroyed a unit on the board. It is an absolutely fantastic card. Obviously, the only danger with it is calling in favors with the Scorpion or Scorpion Splash. But hopefully, you know, by the time you've played it, a lot of the time you've already dropped a bunch of attachments that are worth stealing, and hopefully you've got it out of hand. But yeah, that was my experience with the deck. Work to be done. There's a month before Paris, and we have to see if anyone can come up with what needs to be done to take down that Scorpion deck and give it a bit more game. It is interesting, I think, that a lot of the players at Cork were aware, like myself and like Justin, were aware of the Scorpion menace, as it were, and did take actions to try get over it, but it just wasn't enough.
So yeah. You know, on that, how much of a problem do you think, you know, the strength of Scorpion is? You know, do you think it's a unstoppable monster, or is it just sort of the meta hasn't quite evolved yet? Andy, do you want to sort of weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. From watching the Scorpion players play, like we got to see a lot of Scorpion games on stream, obviously, because there were 3 in the top 4.
A lot of mirror match as well.
Yeah, the mirror match was actually, I've actually kind of found it quite interesting. It's quite a mind game. It's quite a methodical one, and you've got to make a lot of really, really, really tight decisions and really play it really, really efficiently, which I found really, really interesting, actually. It's a very high stress game, very high skill game between the two players. As we interviewed Matt, the eventual winner of the Cork Kotei, after, I think it was his top 8 game, or his top 4 game, I'm not sure. He was... His top 8 game. Yeah, he was saying it was a very skill-intensive matchup, and there's a couple of key cards, like Favored Niece and stuff, that you kind of have to get, and they're kind of deciding the matchup. But you also saw like some of the Scorpions running some, what I would have considered like some small anti-Scorpion or anti-mirror meta, which was Goblin Sneak, to steal fate off of other players, get that additional into fights and stuff, and try and pressure economically, and try and remove the ability to play some of the key cards in battles like Kachiko. But looking at the numbers, like that Baz put up on the Imperial Advisor website, very, very nice analysis there, Baz, by the way.
Thank you.
We're looking at 243 games of Scorpion, and the only clan, barring the Mirror, the only clan that they don't have 60% or higher win rate against is Lion, and that's 54. And when we're talking 60s, we're talking high 60s, 67, 66, 78. Okay, 78 against Unicorn, but that's a paddling anyway. That's always going to be a win for them. But anything in the 60s, if you talk about high volume of games and you're talking about sort of parity, this happens a lot with MMR systems. What you're aiming to do is you're aiming to have 50-50. 50-50 is the split that you kind of eventually want to get around. There can be times when you can be more powerful and less powerful, but 55 is like the tolerance limit, really, I would say. Looking at how Scorpion are tuned, anything over 60 is just, it's a problem. And when you have an almost across the board 60% plus win rate, that is really, really scary. That means that they have such a high power level. And so what is actually going to be really important in future tournaments is Lion. Lion, I think, are going to be super important because they currently have the best win rate, apart from the Scorpion Mirror. They have the best win rate, and I think they have the right tools to actually bring Scorpion down a peg. So we need to see a lot of Lion players that are going to warp the environment a little bit so that you can actually beat Scorpion and stop them from getting into the cuts. But Lion lose to a bunch of other things, so it's not an ironclad strategy. But if you see more Lion, I think you'll see less Scorpion less Scorpion qualifying.
Owen, what are your thoughts? I know you've been sort of trying to think through, what deck you might use crowd-wise.
Yeah, I ran through some kind of slightly crazy ideas. I had an idea with a deck which was 29 attachments, 10 conflict personalities, and some rebuilds. Now, my reasoning behind that was I thought that when people go to try and counter Scorpion, they'll try to do it by playing more event cancel. So rather than have a situation where you're kind of playing 12 or 15 events and they're all really important to land, try to push to a scenario where you're not relying on any of your events landing. You're just playing entirely attachments. And I mean, it still sucks because the Scorpion, because of Favored Niece, will still be able to cycle out cards that if you never play an event, they're just like, okay, well, I'll cycle out all my event cancel and I'll draw my other stuff. So it's still not ideal. And it relies on keeping guys on the board, which is actually fairly difficult against the Scorpion deck, between their ability to go for Void and between their ability for Fate Worse than Death and Mono Aware and generally make life hard for you. And stacking one guy up super tall is a terrible idea as well because of Fate Worse than Death. So it's difficult. It's flat out difficult. I might give that idea a go. I don't think it's there yet. I think the card pool is still a little shallow to pivot significantly to fight Scorpion. The problem is the basic Scorpion when you look at it, Scorpion didn't actually get that much in the Imperial cycle. They got 3 or 4 in-plan options they play, but they're all really good. They play Fate Worse than Death, and then they play Kachiko, and they play some Meek Informant, and they play Policy Debate and Mono no Aware. And it just so happens that Scorpion have all these tools that mean all of those things work quite well for them. The Scorpion, it's not a problem of this. Fate Worse than Death is broken, but that's not the problem. It's not that the Stronghold is broken. It's that the different pieces of Scorpion's puzzle have come together very, very well. I was arguing for a while that Scorpion have the best 1 and 2 drops in the game. And I kind of stand by that. They have an incredible set of cheap personalities, which position them very well to go, I'm going to go wide. Like Boishi Liar is ridiculous. And their other 1 drops are also amazingly good. And their 2 drops are often overstated and really good. And it just means they can go, well, I'll just buy 3 guys. I'll put no fate in them. I'll save all my fate. And I have a bunch of emergency, really powerful actions or conflict characters I can play. And if you try to cancel them, because that's the risk of it, I've got the most cancel in the game. I've got, Forged Edict, which is ridiculous. I've got potentially census. I've got policy debate to check your hand. I've got meek informant to check your hand. So they've just got this amazing set of tools that makes them a very complete clan. They don't have a really obvious, like, what's Scorpion's weakness? They're kind of bad in military conflicts. That's not super helpful, because when they splash in Dragon, they got Fate Worse than Death for defense, they got Murmother's Fury for defense, and they've got a murderer's row of provinces from Seeker of the Void that gets them extra resources, because they've got so many they've got 5 in-clan conflict personalities compared to everybody else's 3. And that's a huge factor in them having better ones, because some of them suck, or some of them are average, but some of them are really good, and they just play the really good ones. And that just means that they've got so many additional tools for problem solving that it becomes very difficult to deal with them. I think against Scorpion, I think you have to play more defensively, because they're not that strong offensively. They've got very good or very decent political attacks, but their defense, I think you really have to kind of go, well, turn 1 and 2, I'm just going to try and not lose anything. I'm going to try and bank up some fate, and I'm going to try and start putting some guys on the board with significant amount of fate on them, and then try and protect them a little bit. And some clans can do that and some clans can't. Lion can go ham into them and pull out a bunch of stuff and do really well, and that's cool. Lion can do that. But like Crab can't. Crab's cheap drops are all terrible offensively. So there's no point trying to do that. So what I think you might have to do is accept, right, I'm just going to turtle up turn 1 and 2. I'm going to let him draw a bunch of cards. I'm going to bid 1 the whole time. I'm going to slap on as much dishonor pressure as I can. That's tough, because the box helps protect them against going. They can go 5 turn 1 without really worrying about it, and that box will chip it back over the course of the game. So that gives them it's a little edge they have. But you just have to go, okay, well, I'm going to try and run them out of cards. He's going to come over at me. I'm going to full turtle up and defend, and I'm going to play fast. And I'm going to look to encourage my opponent to play fast. And just try and get it to the next turn, then get it to the turn after that without losing too much, and then start slowly grinding into them. 1 big military attack and 2 defenses, and that's what I'm doing. And I think that's how you're going to have to try and do it, and play quick. Don't let your opponent play slow. Increase the speed of your play. He might sympathetically increase the speed of his play and try to handle it like that. That's the best I've got. That or play some stupid deck with 30 attachments. That's my suggestion.
I've tried a 30 attachment deck. It doesn't help.
No.
Well, a couple things. So first, I think it's worth a shout out to Akuda Hata's article, which actually outlines a lot of those points in quite a lot of detail about some of the edges the Scorpion gets due to their access to very particular types of cards. But I guess how optimistic are you that there is an answer out there, Owen?
I think some clans have more answers potentially than others. One of the counters to it is to try and go wide yourself. And some clans have better going wide options than others. I think Dragon actually have a decent set of guys to go wide with. I think Lion have a very good set of guys to go wide with because of all their additional tools. I think Phoenix's problem, in addition to the vulnerability to dishonor, is a lack of 3-drops that will make them upset. So it'd be lovely if Phoenix get a few more good 3-drops to kind of bulk out that list a bit, because man cannot live on 4 drops alone. I think Crane potentially, like, I'm not sure why Crane are doing that badly against Scorpion, but they are. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, they should be able to guest of honor and just be like, "Come at me, bro."
Still got to get it though. Still got to get that guest of honor.
Yeah, absolutely. But and I'm
not
sure. I think it is about basic. But the thing is, they're the best deck defensively in the environment. You've got the two void provinces. They've got secret cache, and they've got is it what do they play? 4th in a row. They play
Meditations usually.
On the tower.
Meditations on the tower.
Meditations. So
Yeah.
There's nothing but pain for you to attack him. Like the best option is meditations of the Tau. It's like, okay, this is not a particularly happy circumstance. They've got great economy. They get to pass early, so they're generally dominating you in terms of economy. They can use City of Lies for a little bit of extra economic edge. Yeah, it's difficult. It's just it is flat out difficult. There are tools against them. I think you've got to alter your playstyle a little. I think you've got to avoid trying to win fast because you just won't. If you go rar 4 to a guy, 2 fate, rar into the province, and they go Murmur's Fury, and you don't have an answer. I mean, you can lose the game super fast that way.
I was actually
drop Chico, or they can play a Fate Worse Than Death, and yeah, it gives you like Fate Worse Than Death gives you, despite costing 4, if that hits a 4-drop with a Fate, you've cost your opponent a huge amount of potential on their turn. Even more if you've let them put a few attachments on it first or put some boosts into it first. It's backbreaking. And they get value on those cards in the defense like that. They can just go, okay, well, you're not doing this grand. You run to Shameful, cool. You run to Pilgrimage, cool. It makes it very hard to get into them. I think you need to attack fairly overwhelmingly. Like, one guy attacks, unless they're throwaway and you're happy losing with them and you're just there to try and take a ring off them. Like you're getting nothing, you know. You're very unlikely to, like, you might get lucky and you might have nothing and you play a bonsai and crack a problems that way, but I mean, we'll see, but my gut says no, basically. My gut says no.
Myself and Alex, the player that Justin was mentioning earlier that I travelled over to Cork with, after the Kotei, we were testing a few things and trying to come up with some theories as to how you beat Scorpion, and Swarm and going wide was one of them. But what I've noticed is that the game is geared towards not facilitating Swarm as a strategy, because of how the fate works and how the board resets work, how conflict characters work. Basically, you can very rarely actually have a legitimate Swarm for any more than one turn, and even then, you can never really sustain having 5 characters on the board, outnumbering your opponent and actually pressuring provinces at the same time. So, I mean, going wide, it could be an answer. I'm not really sure that it's that great in any clan other than maybe Lion. But I also think you mentioned as well the strategy of just turtling up and being like, I think maybe the strategy should be play a clan that has easy access to honor gain and just sit back, defend, win rings, claim air every once in a while, make sure you don't lose any provinces and win on points at time.
So just when you mentioned that, Kieran Waters, he's one of the Limerick players, isn't he? Just
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, Kieran.
He was the Dragon Challenger, and one of the unique things about his deck was he was playing 2 Way of the Chrysanthemum, which is a super strange choice, but may actually be good for the Scorpion matchup. The Scorpion are going to be bidding 5 every time. So you can pretty much guarantee if you go for a 1 bid, they're going to bid 5 and you can just gain 8 honor right there. So obviously they're going to steal 1 back, but that might make them be a little bit more cautious about bidding 5 against you in future if you've got two fate left over.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I'm reaching.
Yeah, I'm really not. Yeah, I'm really not sure about that because from my experience anyway, you have to bleed them. Certainly, like my final game was against Christian Powell, and I won that game, and that game was a long game of attrition. The one thing about the Scorpion deck is that it has a huge amount of reactive potential, but a lot of those reactive cards are slightly overpriced, not massively, but just slightly. And so what you have to do is you just have to put them in a position where they are forced to blow their fate up every turn. If you allow them to sit on fate and build it up over several turns, they have so many options and so many ways of dealing effectively with what you've got on the board that I think the game becomes much harder to win. So I do think you need to force them to use those big cards and try to keep the game as close and tight as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. And like you sneak your province breaks where you can, but it really is it's a game of attrition. It is a pure game of attrition against Scorpion, and you just have to be incredibly patient. Be aware of how much fate your opponent has, what they could potentially play. Watch for Kachiko in political conflicts. Be very wary. I mean, Kachiko is one of the most important characters because Kachiko gives Scorpion an answer to Guest of Honor. Scorpion have their answer to Guest of Honor in Kachiko. So I mean, it's like I said, it is a grinding game. It is absolutely a grinding game. But you have to force them to play their cards, and the thing is, once they're out of fate, they're surprisingly vulnerable.
Yeah.
They're surprisingly vulnerable once they're out of fate, because all of a sudden, like their boards are generally not strong. I mean, again, like Kachiko aside, if Kachiko lands with a couple of fate, that's a problem. If you don't have a board with Kachiko, their boards are usually not all that strong. And if they're out of fate, their ability to react powerfully to any threats you put down is hugely limited. And like there's an old Magic saying, like, there are no wrong questions, there are only wrong answers. This is in terms of threats. Like, there are no wrong threats, there are only wrong answers. And I think that's the way you have to play. Like, some clans have different options on how they attack. Like I said, Phoenix have Master Gisei Toshi, who's incredibly powerful because her effect goes off independently of her presence. So you name your conflict, go in, and they're shut out for a turn or for a conflict. So yeah, she's massive for Phoenix, and every single Phoenix deck should be playing 3 of her from now on because she's just that cool.
And just for the general playstyle, do you find yourself, like a lot of people have suggested, mulliganing down to your cheap characters and getting as many of them on the board, maybe with no fate?
Oh.
No, I think you need to spread. I think what you need to do is you need to make Scorpion's answers bad. So, like, you don't want a board where you've got 3 guys with 1 fate. You want a board where you've got 1 guy with 0 fate, 1 guy with 2, and 1 guy with 1. So Mononoa Wari is, it's still pretty good, but it's not backbreaking. And yeah, like it's just very, very tough.
Just play around a Fate Worse Than Death, Mononoa Wari, Kachiko, Wave Scorpion, and a few other cards, and you should be fine.
And Forged Edict, and calling it
Forged Edict. Yeah. I mean, but the thing is, but this goes exactly to what Owen was saying earlier, is that Scorpion just have a complete card pool. Like they are.
Yeah.
They have all the answers. I mean, but the thing is, like that's going to change as well. Like I'm not remotely as doom and gloom about this as you think I might be. Just because, so Scorpion are in a position at the moment where they are basically the only clan with a full suite of excellent conflict characters. Some clans have a few good ones, like Crab have a couple of good ones. Some clans have mostly garbage, like the Phoenix have a single good conflict character, Shrine Maiden, which you should also be playing 3 of in every single Phoenix deck, by the way, Phoenix players. But as the card pool expands and as more conflict characters come into the game, then other clans are going to gain in that respect as well. And all of a sudden, because this is basically a unique axis that the Scorpion can attack along. Like they are the only clan that can just go, I'm going to buy a guy, I'm going to pass. Now I've got fate. Now I've got reactive ability. I can see what you're doing. So as more conflict characters come into the game, and other clans all of a sudden can go, well, you know what? I'm first player. I'm going to play 1 guy. Now I'm going to pass. Now you've got less fate for your incredibly fate-thirsty deck, Mr. Scorpion, and we're still in a position of relative parity. And my guy is probably my guy is going to be better in military, almost guaranteed, compared to your guy on the board. So now you're forced into answering my single cheap guy. You have to, otherwise I'm going to go over and void. I'm going to water. I'm going to wreck your board. And then you're in a position where you are able to respond to the Scorpion's response because you have the fate and you have the conflict characters. And at the moment, that just doesn't happen. It can't happen because nobody has those conflict characters. They can't operate like that.
if you look at the Scorpion Mirror and the final as well, Matt passes as his first. He's active player and he passes. He doesn't buy a single thing.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he has such great conflict characters, and it actually doesn't matter if. And I actually thought I was kind of agog at that. It's like, okay, you're not going to buy anything at all. You're just going to like trash this. All this stuff in my provinces is junk. The one fate is better than anything that I could possibly have here. It seems so bizarre, but it's so right.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, but the thing is, again, like the counter to that is, I'm going to buy a single guy, and I'm going to declare Earth. I'm going to declare Earth as my conflict, and I'm going to go across. Now I'm going to start eating at your hand. And like losing a big conflict character is a huge deal for Scorpion. Like losing those cards is really, really bad news.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. So I mean, like when you're policy debating Scorpion, always take their conflict characters. Or Fate Worse Than Death, if it's there, or take their conflict characters. Those are the cards you need to get out of their hand, because all of a sudden their reactive potential drops massively, and then they have to start investing in their dynasty phase. They have to have guys on the board, which they don't want to do, and all of a sudden their reactive potential goes completely out the window. They don't have it anymore. So, yeah, I mean, but for the time being, they have completely unique axes of attack that no other clan has access to, and that no other clan really has any answers to. Like the game doesn't really contain any answers to these like how Scorpion is playing right now. Yeah. So that just gives Scorpion a huge advantage, because when you look at their sorry, Baz.
It is noticeable that it wasn't just the case that Scorpion got a bunch of extra cards and then suddenly started doing well. They did, but they've also adjusted the playstyle and have actually start taking a unique approach to the entire game. And as players of other clans who are looking to take down Scorpion, we're at a stage. I think we were at the stage for Cork where we thought maybe we could adjust our decks a little bit and maybe make a few changes to play style, and then we'll have a shot. But I think that's turned out not to be the case. I think the Scorpion deck and the components of that deck have made a shift in the game that we're being forced to adapt to. So at that level, at the top tables, because there's going to be a lot of Scorpion there at the moment, a different game is being played, and we need to adjust our decks to that game and know how to play in that new style of game. This is similar to when we first started playing, when we got the kind of initial cards and we were playing cobbled together decks. We played a completely different game than we are playing now, and I think that kind of shift has happened here. It is also worth noting that we've had 2 tournaments. We're going to have the Grand Prix in Paris, and then that's going to be it. We're going to be complaining about how busted Phoenix are for the months after that, and how ridiculous all those Phoenix cards are. And hopefully there'll be a bit of a cycle that way. Now, obviously, if we get into a situation where the Scorpion are still ruling the roost, even after the full clan pack for Phoenix, then, that's a problem, right? I suspect we're not going to get there. But I do feel that there is a lot of game that we have yet unraveled with just the decks that we have, adjusting them and adjusting the playstyle. And I think in the comments earlier, Makoto Hado was talking about that line Scorpion deck that he's been doing a lot of testing with, that's been doing quite well in Greece recently, at one of the local tourneys. So, styles like that where it's not just the deck, but it's also the play style has been adjusted to try accommodate for the new paradigm, I guess, we find ourselves in. But yeah, I think the Paris Kotei is going to be super interesting. I think Scorpion pose a really, really interesting puzzle. One of the additional questions is, if you can solve that puzzle, do you go Scorpion? And if you go Scorpion, how focused do you go on taking down Scorpion? So we've seen a lot of the Scorpion decks going down to 2 waves Scorpions rather than 3 because of that matchup. They've gone up to 3 favorite nieces to try cycle it out. Is it worthwhile for a Scorpion deck just to completely abandon Wave Scorpion altogether because it's so poor in the mirror matchup, and instead play cards that are
Yes,
the Phoenix go wild. But it might be a good call. It might be a good call. Like if you really want to meta against that Scorpion matchup and hope you can get through those earlier games, you'll be in a much better situation for those final pairings of the single limbs.
I will say this. I was just looking at what days the other Koteis are on. If there is a Kotei in Houston, Texas at the end of March, 1st of April. There is a Kotei in Warsaw, Poland from 14th to 15th of April. If the Phoenix pack is out in March, those two will have the Phoenix pack. But if it's out of the 18th of April, which it may be, they will still be the same environment. So we could have up to 3 Kotei in this same format. Which would not be ideal.
Well, I don't know. I mean, at that stage, it may actually have given us a chance to work it out, and we might have seen that shift already. Like, I do feel that this is a solvable problem, but I think we need to take extreme action. And whether, like, I know right now, I feel that Dragon Crab are the kind of next 2 decks that you need to be ready for. If you're meting your deck so hard against Scorpion that it hurts you in those 2 matchups, you might never get to play a Scorpion. Because, if you hit one of those poor matchups, you're gone. And I think we could see that in the Cork results. One of the breakdowns we were able to put together had the list of opponents that people played. And for many clans, the top of clan, the qualifiers, were players who managed to dodge the Scorpion matchup.
Although Dave is pointing out he went 2 for 2 against Scorpion playing Lion, earning Hadamoto. So,
well, Dave is special. I'm not sure he really is reflective of the universe in general.
But I think there's some element of like we mentioned Kieran Waters as well, the Limerick player. He faced 3 Scorpion and beat all 3 of them. He faced 3 Scorpion in a row and beat all 3 of them. Dave played 2 Scorpion and beat them. I think there are definitely ways to beat Scorpion. It's just maybe not. Maybe the rest of the environment is just not as aware as they need to be that Scorpion are as powerful as they are. Maybe it's just people need those 1 or 2 tournaments of experience in this current format to get that idea going behind them, and to get the idea that, yes, you do need to be aware of how Scorpion play, and you do need to prepare for it. I actually think maybe we won't see as dominant. I'm gonna put it out there. We're probably not going to see as dominant a Scorpion showing in, let's say, in Paris. I won't go beyond Paris.
Are any of you guys planning on getting to Paris?
Nope.
Not me.
I won't make
Birmingham
it. I
for
won't
me.
make it. Yeah, Birmingham for me too.
I'm debating, but I'll see. Inertia may get me to just go to Birmingham.
Fair enough. Okay, I think that's probably a good place to leave it, unless anyone has last final burning points they want to make. Or indeed, Owen, any Badger facts they want to leave.
Badger facts?
Ooh, Beaver facts, I should say.
Hold on,
How dare you,
am I
Colm?
checking?
How dare you?
Am I
Badger
changing
facts.
what? Are we changing the whole focus of the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. We've run out of beaver facts, so we need a new animal. I should add, there was a lot of complaints that we missed our beaver fact last time around. But it was delivered live from Cork, so if you weren't in Cork, you're going to be down a beaver fact.
It's true. I thought that was a good one, actually.
Was.
We
also had people
ruthlessly
coming
honest.
up to us and giving us beaver jokes. There was
Yeah! There was a lot of beaver jokes. Talk amongst yourselves, guys. I'm just pulling up the textbook.
One thing we didn't get to tonight was examples of cards that we think are actually pretty well designed and that we really like. After last ages-long rant of
great card.
here's everything terrible, we didn't get to.
Justin
cards
just
that we
irritated because
thought
he
were
did the homework and no one else did.
No one else.
Yeah. That's okay. We'll do it next week. or
You're
something
that
like
kid
that.
in the class who's like, oh, didn't you give us homework, teacher? Teacher, didn't you give us homework that we should? And everyone else is like, shut up!
All right, give us one card. One card, Justin.
Yeah, start us off.
I know one card I like.
All disappointed me again. Oh, so yeah, okay. In terms of in Crab, I think Hida Casada is a really well designed card. There we go. But
I strongly disagree. I strongly disagree. And not for the reasons you might think.
Okay, Baz, just one card, straight off. Hot take. What's your one card?
The Ancestral Die Show. I love the Ancestral.
Okay.
I think they're costly enough, expensive, but a bit of card draw.
Dragon Centipede too. Not seeing any play, but I love the design of that card.
Yeah, you'll need a few monks. I've heard people playing it, but until the monk deck kicks off, but it will be really good. Yeah, because you only get an advantage when you lose. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting card, and creates all kinds of interesting decisions.
How much more time do we need to buy on?
Just
beavers can hold their breath for up to 15 minutes.
Wow.
It's pretty high. It's not sperm whale high, but it's pretty high.
Cool.
Or 15 hours, something crazy.
All right, do you have a one card hot take on?
Rebuild. I love Rebuild from a flavor point of view. It's a great one of this is the crab are about holdings and about getting you back the critical holding you need at the moment where you need it. And it's just a shame that there aren't a few more holdings that do kind of different things that are good defensively. Iron Mine's ridiculous, and Storehouse is good cycle for it, and Favor Ground could be really a valuable movement. But I'd like to see a good defensive holding as well.
Cola, you're one.
I haven't really seen that one yet.
You go first. Let me have a think.
Are we talking in clan or any card in the game?
Any card.
Any, yeah.
Court games. I think Court games is a really well designed.
Get out.
I'm gonna say Blackmail Artist. I like that card a lot.
All right.
Let me justify myself briefly on Hida Casada though. I can see where Justin's coming from. My only issue with it is I think it should be a activated reaction because of the number of people who forget about it.
Yeah. Like didn't you forget it? No, it wasn't you. It was in the next game that we watched, wasn't it?
Oh, I forget about it all the time. Like playing local games here, friendly games here.
Yeah.
Casada may as well be blank as far as I'm concerned. It's like, I will play my best. I will play my best action into your Casada. I'm amazing.
So I don't as much mind that. I do mind the situation where the crab player forgets and doesn't cancel, and then they go on a couple of actions, and they're like, no, hold on. Casada would have cancelled that. It's not a reaction.
Yeah.
It's so it has to happen. We can't have forgotten, so we have to go back now. That's my only problem with it. I wouldn't mind it if the crab player had to react and had to cancel it. I mean, it's so thematic, and he's such a big stick.
Quick, small discussion. In terms of tracking the game state, the responsibility is on the players to track the game state, right? So if something like that happens, you cannot rewind back to that point, can you?
I don't know.
Magic 8 Ball says
this is one
again later.
where there is no tool to fix it.
Yeah, this is another one that I was thinking.
What the guidelines are that the judge is to attempt to fix the game state.
Ooh.
And that may mean, okay, we've got to rewind this. And that is sometimes achievable and sometimes not achievable. And technically, both players are at fault. It is not the fault of the Casada player that he forgot to use Casada. It is the fault of
DQs for everyone.
That's it. It's a straight up DQ. Yeah. Which we would have had.
But a DQ both of these players in the top 8.
Or no,
both the players in the final.
In the final. Yeah. Neither of them successfully tracked the game state. So, and neither of them requested that we went.
You don't have to be
tournament organizer seen hightailing it over the border with bag full of swag.
Problem. You've got to we had situations where the players had been, kind of going, I was tracking properly, he was not tracking it properly, and you have to sit down and kind of listen to them kind of articulate their positions while trying to figure out what's actually going on and what you're actually to do. Because sometimes it's
Who's
like
lying?
Yeah.
not who's lying, but like, you know, who someone believes one thing, another person believes the other thing, and you're like, okay. And you have to try and get to the root of, like, you're trying to figure out intent, and intent is impossible to determine.
You should use.
Sometimes just going, okay, this person said this person said that. Did you have any reason to believe he was saying that? No. Okay, well, then I can't help you.
Need to revive 16th century witch hunting techniques. Just
I
dump them.
was
Float
gonna
their
say-
witch.
in such a way it couldn't be fixed.
I was going to say you should use fear tactics. Disqualify the people at the next table as an example for the people at this table.
At the start of the tournament, you just DQ someone randomly and let them know you mean business. Someone who revealed their stronghold before determining who goes first.
Get out of my tournament!
How dare you reveal your stronghold before determining first player? Yeah, okay. So on that one, we will be back in a couple of weeks, and yeah, take care. Thanks for all the chat. Always kind of
Take
fun.
care, everybody.
And we'll see you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.